Yeah, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
On behalf of the Eco-Jesuit Network of South Asia, with the Jesuit Resource and Response Hub, the JRH, it is with delightful pleasure that I welcome you all to this webinar session on Protecting Earth, Our Common Home, Reviving Agroecology. I'll just say that again. Protecting Earth, Our Common Home, Reviving Agroecology. At the start, I request Dr. George Pateri, the Provincial and President of the Jesuit Conference of South Asia, to present his introductory remarks. They are entitled Effective Collaboration for a New Normal and New Beginnings. Dr. George Pateri.
Thank you, Lancy, and I am very happy to be here. And I am more delighted to see Vandanaji and Pedro as participants, resource persons for this sharing and discussion. And I think we are at a very critical point in history. At that point, to reflect together on this important theme is perhaps our duty. So I go to my presentation. I am a little out of the topic in this sense. I want to look at the crisis today in the light of the pandemic and see what could be the response, what need to be the response today. It may not be directly touching upon the topic that we mentioned, agroecology, but I am sure that broad strokes will have some implications for it as well. So we'll start with the PowerPoint presentation, please. So I titled my little presentation in terms of the ecology, the humans, and the future, an invitation to imagine new. That imagination, the word imagination is most important for me at this time. Next slide. I'm talking about the irony of our time. It is rather ironic that we, the humans, seem to recognize our interrelatedness and our interdependence so intensely and globally, mainly through the pandemic of COVID-19. Something that is obvious to my mind, but it comes to us more forcefully now. But it came to us at the cost of millions of lives, the price we paid for the livelihood of thousands of migrant laborers, and the pandemic came to teach us what was obvious. Next. When you look at our history, especially history of our evolution, though it is still hypothetical calculations, our universe has been 13.8 billion years old, we are told. The planet Earth is probably about 4.6 billion years young. The age of the human species, they say it's between 150,000 years. What is more important for my reflection, much of the journey of the universe and the Earth happened without the human beings. Well, the humans cannot as yet think of itself without the Earth. The latter, the Earth has been and had been evolving without the humans. So the evolutionary theory tells me, or tell us, that we are deeply interconnected with the entire universe, with the Earth, and with everything on this planet. Next. So the paradox is this. Next, yeah. The pandemic enabled many of us to find more time to watch the birds, which I am doing from my room now, to look at the sky, to appreciate the nature. to pause and to think and to relax. But the lockdown is not a luxury time for those who are on daily migrant labor. They are losing and they lost their livelihood. So they are sojourners in this consumerist wasteland. But to borrow a term from Arundhati Roy, our earth, our common home, has become a consumerist wasteland. Next one. Why did we come to this stage? I think it is obvious to many of us, but maybe it is good to narrate it, because we ignored the many warnings. Not so long ago, Gandhiji spoke about an economy and a way of life that is sustainable and self-reliant. He used the term Swadeshi in the deep sense of the word. He invited us to think and imagine in a new way. But the makers of modern India chose the other way of development, though they did not abandon altogether Gandhiji's vision. Secondly, recall the potent social movements like that of Bahuguna, Mehta Patkar and all that to protect the forests and the lands. We pretend not to know the living traditions of the Adivasis among us, and we have 100 million of them. They know the secrets of sustainable living. Fourthly, we are blinded to the fact that, I am more or less quoting this, 30% of the world economy, they say, is dependent on armament industry. Therefore, wars and industries of armaments are necessary for an economy that we have built up. Then think of, they say, about 2,000 nuclear explosions underwater or in the deserts. Its impact on the planet Earth. All these warnings we ignored and we are ignoring even today. Next slide. If we ignore these warnings, what is the cost that we pay? I am quoting Vandana here. Conservation of Earth's resources and equitable sharing was replaced by greed and the grabbing and privatization of resources. Sustainable economies and societies were replaced by non-sustainable production systems and a relentless drive to spread the virus of consumerism. Decision-making moved into the hands of global corporations, both directly and indirectly. So our blindness came from this not listening to the warnings. Hedges also wrote in 2013, we have abandoned the common good, an important theme in the social teaching of the church. We have been stripped of our rights and voice. The corporate bodies write the laws and determine how we structure our society. That's the cost of our blindness. Next slide. What must we do? We must fall in love with the earth, the living, sacred planet, this dynamic system. This is a quote from the Bolivian legislation. And Chomsky says, we have many alternatives, only that we don't want to take it. That is more dangerous. We have so much of wisdom traditions in the world, including religious traditions, we ignore them. I go back to the Franciscan realism, Francis of Assisi we are talking about. Just want to read the last paragraph there. Francis of Assisi related to all of God's creatures, which is why he could colloquy with brother sun, sister moon, brother wind, sister water, brother fire, sister mother earth, etc. Therefore, he developed a system of relationship with everything in the world and the universe. That new relationship strategy has to be reinvented by us for our times. Next slide. So it is in that context that we are inviting for a renewed discussion among the Jesuits and what is the ecological predicament that is in front of us. I don't want to elaborate those key sentences there. That might take quite a while, simply to say that in the Jesuit spiritual traditions, we talk about principle and foundation, which is inviting us to reverence and praise God. And it is in relation to that reverence and praise God that we make choices of the particular things in the world. And we use the word tantum quantum, in as much as it helps us to go to the end. That is the first meditation. Then we end the retreat with that meditation, contemplatio ad amorem, to find God in all things. So there is therefore inbuilt a perspective that everything is interrelated and my choices of the particular things should be in relation to the whole. So we are invited to choose the particulars always in relation to the whole, the holistic system. And Laudato Si audaciously speaks of this term, Earth as our common home. I am delighted that Vandana ji is amidst us. Vandana ji and Leonardo Boff and others have contributed to this important document, Laudato Si. Amitav Ghosh in his book Derangement, the Derangement says, 7 pages devoted to Laudato Si. And he says, so far it's the best document on ecology. And it is using the term, our common home, the earth. But for lots of people, it is neither common nor is it a home. They are strangers in this planet. Next slide. So what is our future in this pandemic world? If you look at objectively, the global technology has today the capacity to produce sufficient food for everyone on the face of this earth. And the global technology is also capable of reaching this food where it is most needed. And yet, even today, more people die of hunger than of the pandemic. We need the political wisdom to accomplish what is capable of us. My question will be like, will the pandemic invite us to create a UN body, a body at the United Nations, to make sure that basic food and health is available for all? It is doable technologically, but will we? Secondly, Kaushik Dixit has been proposing this idea that South Asian countries have got a geographical unity and a cultural heritage that is common. Can we function with greater collaboration, building an eco-culture among the South Asian countries to support one another, to remove hunger and poverty, and to enhance our future? Next slide. So it is in that context that we are discussing today the theme, Our Common Home, Reviving Agroecology. Vandana ji and Pedro, they are more rooted in this topic, experts in this line. They will be talking about this, how do we revive agroecology to respond to this crisis. My point is simply this. The technology enables us in one sense to remove poverty. The technology enables us today to reach that food where it is most needed. What is lacking is an ecological sense that we are one united family, interdependent, interrelated. Can we not do that? And I want to hear from Walpole and Vandanaji, how we can make this issue the vital issue of our day and take this discussion forward. I wish all the best and I am eager to listen to them. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Back to Lancy.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. George, for a very holistic presentation, taking us back to 14.6 billion years again, focusing us within the last 4 months, what we've been through, and then putting before us the issues. I think the issues are clear to us, but putting before us the challenges to look at alternatives, to come up with alternatives, and to listen to people who have been working on generating these alternatives over the last several years in different parts of our South Asian geographical zone. Thank you, Dr. George, for your introductory remarks and for setting the scene for our conversation this evening. Friends, we have on our panel very distinguished speakers and eminent ecology and environmental advocates. We have Dr. Vandana Shiva, the founder of Navdanya and the Research Foundation for Science, Technology and Ecology. She was trained as a physicist, that may surprise some of us, and she has been a prominent advocate for natural organic farming practices, women's rights in farming, and she has been involved in the whole issue of advocacy for against biopiracy. Dr. Vandana Shiva will be sharing with us in a few moments her own thoughts on the topic, nature's rights are people's rights. How do we revive India's agrarian dependent economy to empower and live sustainably in this new normal, which was explained to us very well by Dr. George Pateri. We also have with us Dr. Pedro Walpole, the Director of Research at the Institute of Environmental Science for Social Change from the Philippines. So someone from Dehradun and someone from the Philippines. Dr. Pedro Walpole works for the education and rights of the grassroots communities who are the real protectors of the land. He actively engages with the youth in forest regeneration practices in the Philippines. As I said, Dr. Vandana and Dr. Pedro will be talking to us this evening from the hills of Dehradun and from the Philippines, respectively. A word of introduction about myself. I'm Dr. Lancy De Cruz, currently the principal of St. Xavier's College in Ahmedabad. Myself, I'm a botanist, and I have a keen interest in tribal medicinal plants, which was also the topic of my doctoral thesis, and has also inspired me to set up Adi Aushadhi, a group of tribal medicinal practitioners working from the Dediapada forest in South Gujarat. Before we get to listening to Dr. Vandana Shiva, I'd just like to share with you the question that runs through the encyclical of Pope Francis Laudato Si. The question that Pope Francis poses us: what type of world do you dream for your children? How would be the water, the air, the trees, the plants, the forest? How would that world be? If we have a dream of what type of world we plan to leave to our children and our grandchildren, the time has come for us to look for creative, real alternatives in order to make this dream a reality. I now welcome our first panelist, Dr. Vandana Shiva, the founder of Navdanya, for her session. Dr. Vandana, you have about 20 minutes, and maybe at the end, if I need, I will alert you. And I request the other speakers to mute their mics so there'll be a little less disturbance.
Thank you, Dr. Nancy, and thank you, Dr. George, for your opening remarks. I loved Tantum Quantum because, I did my PhD in the foundations of quantum theory, and I used to sleep and dream the quantum. And I never imagined that I would not be working with the quantum all my life. But ecology was a big passion, and it was 1984 when violence erupted in Punjab, and at the same time, the Bhopal disaster took place. And I asked the United Nations if I could do a study on what was going on. And I realized then that there isn't one agriculture. There is an agriculture that has evolved over millennia. And that agriculture is working with farm nature's ways. It is literally taking care of our common home. The word agriculture means the care of the land. And it's not an accident then that when you do agriculture that cares for the land, you in fact enrich our home. You have more food to share with more creatures, more beings. You have more nourishing food. And while I was doing my work on the Punjab and the Green Revolution, I came across this one copy of a book written by Sir Albert Howard when he was sent to India in 1905 to improve Indian agriculture on Western industrial principles. And he arrived in India and he said, I can't improve this farming. I have to make the peasants of India my professors. And I have to learn how to do real farming. Out of his learning from Indian peasants, he wrote the book, The Agricultural Testament, and I would recommend that it be read by everyone. He differentiates the agriculture of countries like India from the West. And he says, in the agriculture of Asia, we find ourselves confronted with a system of peasant farming which in essential soon became stabilized. What is happening today in the small fields of India and China took place many centuries ago. There is no need to study historical records or to pay visit to the remains of the ancient farms of the Andes. The agricultural practices of the Orient have passed the supreme test. They are almost as permanent as those of the primeval forest, the prairie, the ocean. In the small farms of Asia, you see farming as it has been practiced over thousands of years. And the different books, some talk about farmers of 40 centuries, some talk about 10,000 years, but whatever it is, for thousands of years, when you do agriculture, caring for our common home, you can farm forever. This is the system of agriculture that today is called agroecology, ecological agriculture, the science of ecology, the science of how nature works, applied to the field of agriculture. The name is new, the practices are ancient. But you have another system. called industrial agriculture, which not only treats agriculture as an industrial activity and no more as the care for the land, but uses industrial products, particularly war chemicals, as the base of agriculture. So having worked from 1984 onwards to solve this puzzle of why are we destroying the earth? Why are people starving? Why are there conflicts? Why is the water disappearing? Why are the bees and pollinators disappearing? Why is the land being desertified? I realized over these now 36 years of study that actually industrial agriculture is not a science, because the science is a framework that explains how a system works. It doesn't have a systems view. It doesn't have a holistic view of how the soil works, how the plants work, how the pollinators work, how pests and weeds are created, what's in our food. It has absolutely zero idea. And I can tell you this because not only have I read everything that's published, I've had to deal with legal cases. So when I was writing my book, The Violence of the Green Revolution for the United Nations, it's available in India from Natraj. It's available in other parts of the world by Zed Books and Kentucky Press. I realized that in effect what had happened is a group of companies had been asked by Hitler to make chemicals to kill people in concentration camps and to make chemicals for war. Xylon B was the gas that was used to gas people in the gas chambers. Ammunitions were made, poison gases were made. One of the techniques was fixing nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen, by burning fossil fuels. This same technology then became the basis of synthetic chemical fertilizers, which is why you have so many fertilizer bombs made from synthetic fertilizers in Oslo, in Afghanistan, in the big bombing in Oklahoma. Even in India, I think the High Court bombing of New Delhi was our fertilizer bomb. The Hyderabad bombing was a fertilizer bomb. So here were chemicals made to kill people. And then those who had got addicted to profits said, why did we give up? Why don't we just change the story and say, without this, we can't feed the world? This is necessary for food production. So war chemicals became agri-chemicals, and the story became feeding the world without a science, without a system. The soil was called an empty container for pouring synthetic fertilizers, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Even last April, I was in the Supreme Court. You know, what 33 years I've been protecting the seed with love, preventing patenting because seeds are not inventions, preventing GMOs because of the harm they do. And we managed to pass laws in India, including Article 3J of our patent law, which says plants, animals, and seeds are not inventions. And in a way, this is a distillation of our ancient ecological philosophy, but it is also a distillation of Laudato Si, that we are on one common home. We are one community. There is no one less and no one more. Other species are not inferior to us. Other people are not inferior to us. People of a different color, people of a different faith, women are not lesser humans. And these are basically the marches that are taking place today, everywhere on the issue of justice. Father George talked about the times we are in, the corona lockdown. And I have sent for the participants to be shared my first reflections when the corona pandemic was announced. And I did ecological reflections on the coronavirus. It isn't that a virus came out of nothing and attacked us. The virus came out of our invasion into homes of animals. So of the 300 new infectious diseases in the last 30 years, all have come because we haven't learned to respect that in our common home, there are different rooms, there are different cultures, there are different species, and each of them has a right to their ecological space. SARS, MERS, Zika, Ebola, Corona are all spillovers of the invasion of agribusiness into forest systems. Now, we are always told that industrial agriculture produces more. But for me, this has been proven to be very, very false. And my research over these last 6 years, as well as my practice through Navdanya, the movement I have built since 1933 to protect the integrity of the seed and biodiversity, to promote agroecology as chemical-free farming, and to produce good, healthy food. If you look at the facts, let me just run through a few data. 80% of the food we eat today comes from small farms. Only 20% comes from the large farms that are invading into the Amazon and burning the homes of the indigenous people, invading into Indonesian forests and destroying habitat of wild species and indigenous people. But the most important thing is, my research has shown that we are measuring the wrong thing to say we are producing more food. We measure yield per acre. Now, when you grow a monoculture with lots of chemicals, and you don't count how much chemical, how much energy, you don't count how much water, you don't count the soil status, and you don't count the quality of the food you produce, the quantity of nutritionally empty toxic food, which often is not food because 90% of the commodities are being used for biofuel and animal feed, it tells you nothing. So I decided I was going to measure the biodiversity because my imagination is shaped by biodiversity. And I've promoted biodiverse agriculture to take care of our common home. So I said, I'm going to assess biodiversity-based productivity. We're going to look at everything we can produce with agroecology and all the inputs that go in. Let me give you just 2 figures. Ecological systems use 1 unit of energy to produce 10 units of food. Industrial agriculture uses 10 units of energy to produce 1 unit of bad toxic food that gives us cancer and all the other chronic diseases that are impacting us. But we have done a major study over years. We did the biodiversity analysis, then I converted it into nutrition tables from the National Institute of Nutrition. And this report is available on the Navdanya website. It's called Health Per Acre, Organic Solutions to Hunger and Malnutrition. We have shown in this that if we take care of our common home, we grow biodiversity, we can actually feed 2 times India's population. No child needs to die of malnutrition. No person needs to die of hunger. The figures are shocking. Every year, 80,000 children below 5 die because of lack of food. 1.9 billion people every 24% of Indians are hungry, not because the soil won't provide us good food, not because the farmers are not brilliant, not because we don't have an agroecology system that can do it, but because the greed of agribusiness keeps changing rules. And my life has been dedicated to both exposing the lab because I have a commitment to truth. Science is truth, but also protecting the earth, protecting our farmers. Why should 400,000 farmers have committed suicide since neoliberal globalization? Not necessarily. That debt was for chemicals and seeds. We are now 100 on the 100 out of 119 countries on the hunger list. And I'm so glad that Father George talked about the triple crisis. The triple crisis is the crisis of the earth, our common home, our soil, our water, our biodiversity. We are moving very fast towards a water famine. We are moving very fast to desertification, loss of biodiversity. But my research, and I have a book called Who Really Feeds the World that I wrote for the Expo in Milan a few years ago. And I then synthesized, they wanted me to synthesize all the data. Because of industrial agriculture, 75% soils have been destroyed, 75% land has been destroyed, 75% water has been destroyed, 90% biodiversity has been destroyed, and 50% of the greenhouse gases destroying the climate come from an industrial globalization of food and farming. We now have an option. Not only have we done the right thing thousands of years ago, but science now is recognizing, the FAO, the IASTD, all are recognizing that chemical farming, industrial farming is not the way forward. Agroecology is the way forward. But what does agroecology do? Reminds us we share this earth with other species. Therefore, agriculture has to be co-creation with other species. And when you work with the soil organisms, with the earthworms, with the mycorrhizal fungi, you produce more food. When you work with pollinators and don't spray poisons, our research at the Navdanya farm has shown the food production increases by 30%. 1/3 of the food we eat is created by pollinators. But most importantly, the water gets generated. The water in our land is now 70 feet higher than it was when we started. And we produce nourishing food. So in conclusion, what I would love to say to the Jesuit Conference and to all of you who are joining this webinar, let's grow gardens everywhere. In a balcony, you know, the Jesuit system has so much land. Let's turn our land into gardens of nourishment. I call them gardens of hope. These are the gardens of hope that will allow us, our schools, our children, our colleges, to learn how to take care of our common home. They can be extensions of classrooms. And most importantly, another piece I have sent to all of you is my vision of a self-reliant Atmanirbhar Bharat, which has to be a Jaivik Bharat. Jaivik, because it works with life, it works with nature, it works for the common home, where no child goes hungry, no farmer commits suicide, and no one gets disease because of a system of producing food that is a disease-creating system. We have a 10-year window. In this 10-year, we can change the direction. Either destroy our common home and put an end to our 250,000-year evolution, and humanity will be extinct, or we can change direction. According to what St. Francis said, according to what Laudato Si has said, according to the amazing indigenous learning from India and its ecological civilization, most importantly, according to the cutting-edge science of today, by working with the earth and serving our common home and protecting our common home, we can grow enough food for the last person, and we can create enough work for all the hands that have been displaced. We have the wrong measure of not counting the resources and energy inputs and treating human beings as an input that must be gotten rid of. And the imagination of those who destroyed the planet and our food is, we'll do farming without farmers. No, we need hands and heads and hearts to take care of our common home. And therefore, we need an agriculture that is agroecological agriculture, where the head and the heart and the hands work together in unity, in dedication to life on earth and regeneration of our planet. I look forward to working with all of you to make this transition happen in the next decade. Of course, in India, but hopefully wherever you are in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Thank you so much, Dr. Vandana Shiva. It's always a delight to listen to you speak and, you know, sharing with us part of the history of industrial agriculture, as you put it, the myths connected with industrial agriculture, a lot of the difficulties that have been generated because of this system which we adopted, which we chose to adopt, and for presenting us with a glimpse of the type of work that you have done, scientific, the evidence, the prolific literature that you have produced as a result of your research. And it's been a very 20 minutes to put that all together. I think that's something that only you are capable of doing, madam. So thank you very much for your excellent lecture, and we'll get back to you a little later, maybe after Dr. Pedro has spoken. We'll have some conversation based on some of the questions. I'd now like to request Dr. Pedro Walpole to speak to us on the topic standing up for creation. If not us, who? Need for urgent action to be the voice of change for communities. Welcome on board, Dr. Pedro.
Thank you. Please let me know if you can hear me clearly. I think the system is adapting. Fine. Thank you very much. It is very hard to follow through after Dr. Vandana Shiva's presentation. It is amazingly challenging and hopeful. We need that. And Dr. George gave us the cosmic view of these realities that we need to come home to. So I thank you for this invitation. I will try to draw more, perhaps more broadly, more globally, so that we can see that this is a story that needs to be shared, a life that needs to be lived on the planet. So first of all, I will discuss some of the losses over recent decades to see what we have to overcome. You've heard some of it, obviously, already. I'll then look at some of the connected learnings during the pandemic to give a reality check to the ideas of a new startup. And then I look at some of the challenges if these ideas are to fit reality. If we look at the losses, as has been shared, farmers nurture the land. They're not simply laborers. They're not there to just mechanically plant and harvest. Remember, farmers are men and women and children. And they are the growth of the family. Local food diversity is shifting to become just raw material for global market pricing in many areas. It's controlled. The farmer can never make an economic advance. The economic design of raw material production generally means there's no local added value. Traders who own the harvest, often before it's even planted, are the new landlords in many places in the world. And corporate agriculture, as is said, uses the soil as substrate. It's extractive. It has no relations, it has no cycles with seasons or contribution to ecological services. The land itself in our present society has lost value. And so has community lost value. Community life is fragmented today, even in rural areas. And rural families can't often help each other anymore at the rate things are going. Urbanization has more possible opportunities. It has also many, many hidden vulnerabilities. Urban society is sustained on the backs of daily paid surplus labor, who has no security, who has often cases no family, living somewhere else. The market is intended to create dependency, build obsolescence, novelty over nurturing. And this is where it captures this precarious proletariat, as we call it. Young people going to find their fortune, having no belonging, having no identity, and following any promise of a few more dollars somehow. Third thing is the loss of the natural land cover. We had some figures earlier on as we lose the ecology as well. 85% of wetlands in the world, are lost. 85%. They're so rich in biodiversity, in nutrients, in absorption of floodwaters, everything, they're gone. 55% of our oceans are industrially harvested. That means using sonar to identify where the shoal is and taking the entire shoal. 32% of world forests. These are what we call the planetary boundaries. 20% of the Amazon is gone in 50 years. Biodiversity, it's not only species that are going, but it's the population decline. 60% of the population of other vertebrates, other than humans, has been zapped. 50% of the world's coral is gone. Our coral reefs are being decimated. Degradation of the food web and ecosystems. Critical imbalances are emerging everywhere. We've talked already of loss of ecosystem services. Water, climate is an ecosystem service. Natural pollinators, pests, all of these. We've lost in many countries, and it's very good to see how Dr. Shiva is telling us changes in Indian policy. But policy previously upheld the farming community. The farming community was core to our society. It's not. It's taken over by market technocracy. As already mentioned, animal feeds is certainly a huge problem in my part of the world. All of this leads to an eroding of community structures. Most evident and most destructive for indigenous peoples, and their lands are under threat. For mineral mining, explorations, dams, everything. They are given least consideration. And we've had the loss of lives in environmental activism and community protection. Many countries depend upon a populism to undermine the judiciary. There are multiple killings without any accountability in today's economy. So these are some of the losses that we really have to be serious about if we want to find change. And we have to address them. The nature of the global emergency that we're now in has called for a re-evaluating of all systems. the social and ecological foundational underpinnings of our society and our economies are clearly at risk. And this is where we do have the ear of the economy, the global economy, because we've had nearly one crash, but it's not at all clear that we're going to get out of the next one. We've taken too many risks. The evaluation that's going on in society is still fairly superficial. Yeah. We like the clear skies, we like the birds calling, we have time to grow some carrots, but in reality, I think we're recognizing across the world that people are suffering, and it's the same people who are suffering. And we realize, as was said, that we're interconnected, and therefore we must overcome and be inclusive of people. The wave of lockdowns that we're going through helps us recognize that COVID is within us. It's not going to leave us. Okay, we may have a vaccine, but who again will suffer and be most vulnerable and won't have the vaccine for much of, the present time? The marginalized. So for many people in the societal, the economic, the geopolitical, the technological, and the ecological, all are impacting in an integrated way. And for the first time, people are seeing these as connected. We've been thought silos for the last 50, 100 years. I don't know. I haven't been around for 100. But we've been taught to live in silos, in ignorance of the other. Yeah, I'm a professional in this area and I'm stupid in the rest of it. We have to put it together. The vulnerability of daily laborers, migrants, the precariat, the youth has to be addressed. We're learning this. Poor leadership blames others in time of crisis. Economic vulnerability, misuse of technology, evident everywhere. Failures of global governance, we need to strengthen this. This is being felt down to the local level. We're beginning to listen again to science, real science, not techno-science, as a measure of reality. Yeah, we're listening more to scientists than to politicians about COVID. They actually do know more. SDGs, for example, need a total revamp because they are built on an economic model that is business as usual. We'll tweak it. Recognition of these shortcomings of global production, as we've seen in medical and food security. It's absurd what's been going on. Yeah, and even middle-income families are valuing local markets. Community is coming back even under lockdown. And rural communities is where I am here. We have food, and we have social distancing from the major centers, so our risks are potentially lower, yet we have to absorb city workers and overseas workers, unemployed, coming home. And this heightens the risks and the responsibilities and the problems. The gains in the last few decades towards human development and ecological stability alone are nowhere near enough. These learnings that we're talking about are not enough to make a new normal. Yeah, as we unlock, we see pollution levels rise. It's in the very air we breathe. We're going back to business as usual, justified by an economy that says the poor need work. How caring. So, social change is needed. Many say agriculture is a critical point of change. Can community agriculture become the point of social change? How do rural communities stand up? They're increasingly in debt. How do we create a sense of well-being? This sense of well-being coming from Latin American context of buen vivir is a wonderful dynamic. Yeah, it builds community back. Yeah, not the highways to the market. What and how are the voices of inclusion and cohesion that need to be heard, and how are they heard? Can this connect with other emerging agendas for the public good? Key in this is focusing on public good, not the economy. The economy needs to serve the public good. The economy needs to care, needs to be inclusive of all its costs, of all its dynamics. It is not a world unto itself. Economy and ecology have to be the same household. So, access to food is a primary concern, clearly echoed throughout all of the discussions that I've been in the last 4 months. This action involves tapping into agriculture and a sense of enterprise and activity, and the experienced practitioners and communities. Remember, farmers are professionals. They're not labor. They're professionals. Yeah? They know how to grow. Yeah, a whole diversity. The traditional farms here will have 30 different vegetables in them, all different forms. Yeah, you don't find that today. We don't even eat anymore in the cities according to the seasons. We eat according to what's imported, and we forget many of our natural fruits and foods in season. You have to go to a local market to find them. So the biggest hope lies in the actions taken at the local level. We have to work at the local level. We have to try to bring this forward so that it has a voice in our society. The youth have been very good at this in different levels. One has been in the area of climate action. Now, agriculture needs to tie to climate action movement because it has a contribution there. It has a voice. Yeah. If we look at some of the international economic institutions, the financial institutions that actually direct and prioritize investments, and the broader financial system, a number of them are changing. And they are emphasizing, like the UN, the importance of opening up the economy by focusing on green ventures like alternative energy. We need to lobby this. We need the local stories to back the importance of this. The role of educational institutions. Wow, does this need a revamp? You know, our business schools need to teach a new business. Yeah. Community-based research, for me, is one of the key indicators that a university is serving the public good, not just seeking enrollment numbers. We need community-based research. This is where universities can really accompany communities to do their research and to argue their case. So we need much more in terms of this. We need new models, and this is where the models have to come from, not the grand desk models of global corporate transportation, but communities connecting. Ecological awareness and what we call eco-spirituality go hand in hand with this development. You know, today we need an integral ecology amongst the youth. They need to learn this. They need to experience the human spirit and creativity with hope. We need to nurture children's participation in a hopeful and a positive way with real experiences of change. So schools are places where we can plant the seeds of interconnectedness and community, yeah? And so schools need to lead and pursue an experience of these collaborative actions. So let me try to pull a few points out of that. You know, number one, what we're really talking about is solidarity. And for many of us, solidarity of our institutions and of our communities to work with farmers and farming communities. Solidarity is essential. This new strategy, yeah, this new normal needs a new strategy. And we need a huge amount of collaboration around the world to keep this moving. We need this strategy of research and farmers coming together. A third point I will pull out of this is the need for new policies focusing on the public good. Public engagement to guarantee the public good. A fourth is financial paradigm, yeah, of amelioration of community capacity, again, reducing vulnerabilities. We need finances and alternative investments. A fifth is really the inclusion of the poor. And a sixth is basically this lifelong learning. Yeah, sustaining this orientation of solidarity and care in a growing generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Pedro, for your excellent presentation. I think you've given us a perspective, the South Asian perspective. You've added that dimension to it, and you asked. I think you made some very, very pertinent observations. People are suffering, and the same people are suffering, whatever way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was there. The loss of value of both land as well as communities, of community involving people as well. You touched on the connection between all this and mining and dams and, you know, in India, tourism, which takes away also land of the local communities. We spoke about the revaluation of all species, I think very important. Then you spoke about the need for, you know, the undue emphasis that has been placed over the last couple of years on the economy as against ecology, the need to relook at the SDGs in the light of what's been happening, the public good, something that Dr. Vandana also spoke about, the common good. Local level initiatives being taken forward, the importance of youth, children and hope, solidarity, and then you gave us and you summarized for us in those last 6 or 7 points. Thank you very much, Dr. Pedro, for your presentation. I think we already have a few questions that have been coming. And so we can, begin by asking either of you, or perhaps a couple of questions, because we don't have too much of time as we move to the end. Dr. Vandana Shiva, there is a question from Conchita, and that is to do with these genetically modified crops. So would these genetically modified crops be useful to help farmers? Since they can be modified to resist harsh conditions, diseases, and to increase production. Your opinion, I know you, your opinion, and yes.
Yeah, I won't give an opinion. It's too serious a scientific matter to be left to opinion.
Yes, ma'am.
Take the first claim that it helps create more resilience. Resilience is a multi-genetic trait. No one gene can create resilience. You have to be in harmony to deal with a whole complex set of relationships. So whether it's drought tolerance, flood tolerance, salt tolerance, Tanzania has created 150 community seed banks. And we have climate resilience seeds. And every once in a while, a corporation says we've invented and genetically engineered this trait. But the trait is in the seeds the farmers evolve. The second on production, that is a very, very big myth. Because what is genetic engineering? You take a plant, you take its cells, you shoot a gene into the cell of that plant, and there are only two ways of doing this, either with a gene gun or with a plant cancer called agrobacterium. But because every living system has a habit of rejecting what doesn't belong, there's a silencing. So you have to add antiviral, you have to add viral promoters and create a boost. But the third most important is, because it's such a clumsy technology, you shoot and probably 1 in 100,000 will absorb the gene in the right place. To select this from the others, you add an antibiotic resistance marker. The production comes from the original plant. So in BT cotton, the production came from the hybrid. The toxin came from the genetic engineering. It was supposed to control pests, but it failed to regulate the bollworm, which has now become resistant because there is evolution. Father George talked about evolution in his introductory remarks. So it is not the case that genetic engineering can create more resilient crops, and it's not the trait that increases production. What it does do is it increases costs. And the reason I say seeds is I was at a meeting in 87 where the company said the reason we will do genetic engineering is to own and patent the seed. And I don't think life and creation is a manufacture to be owned through patents. I think this is a huge violation of the integrity of creation. My last 33 years have been dedicated to this. But I was on the UN committee to create the laws on biosafety, global laws. And I had to file a case in Indian Supreme Court in '99 because GMOs were brought in illegally. If you look at where are the highest suicides in India, make a map. Make a map of where was GMO BT cotton planted and where are the highest suicides. There's a total overlap with the highest rates of suicide in the GMO cotton area. The price of seed jumped from 5 rupees a kilo to 4,000 rupees a kilo till we use the Essential Commodities Act to have it regulated. But the farmers are in distress and Monsanto made millions. But I'm very glad to say last year there was a news report that because Navdanya saved seeds and because we distributed organic cotton seeds, Monsanto lost 12 million in its market for cotton seeds because now farmers are turning to their own seeds. And there is no way you can practice agroecology without having your indigenous diversity of seeds.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Vandana. Let's take a question for Dr. Pedro. Dr. Pedro, the pandemic, this is a question from Anthony Das. The pandemic has been used by authoritarian regimes across Asia and the world, and the so-called strongmen to weaken public and democratic institutions. How do we address this?
Carefully. Yes, this is one of the problems, and we cannot address power with power, yeah, but with public good. I mean, people are in power, individuals are in power because the greater mass of people are believing what they're saying is true, and that it's going to be for their well-being. Many public are now finding out that it's not for their well-being, and it takes time for that to change. Yeah. So there are many countries where this is difficulty, but you know, at a certain point, the emperor has no clothes. And it'll erode very quickly. The whole point about where this power comes in is to try to not confront the power, but create a greater unity and draw people together so that an alternative can be found. Not one group over another. Yeah, this is a time where we need unity, not division. We've got to seek processes of unity on the basic human level. And I think that this is coming through in nearly all of these countries. We're seeing the condition of a basic humanity that we have to recognize. Otherwise, we have no honor ourselves. We have many ridiculous statements being made in authority. But what we have to keep working for is what's common, not why we're different and why we will fight, but why we must work together. And we're seeing changes in these societies that initially responded with power. They're realizing they have to respond with compassion and increasing inclusion. So, yes, because we've let this run for so long, it'll take time to change, yet it is changing surprisingly rapidly.
Okay.
And I think
thanks a lot,
other powers around the world will help that.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Pedro. A question for Dr. Vandana. Yeah, a question for Dr. Vandana. This is from Denzel Fernandez. Small and marginal farmers often find agriculture not a sustained livelihood, as they do not get a good price for their produce. How then is agriculture a sustainable livelihood in times of high inflation and increasing cost of production and labor?
Yeah. So the fact that the small farms of India or the world are what provide 80% of the food we eat, the fact that I quoted Sir Albert Howard in his Agricultural Testament saying the small farms of today in India are the farms of thousands of years ago. Quite clearly, nothing could have stood thousands of years if it was not viable. The non-viability has been triggered in the 60s by the so-called Green Revolution. In 65, we had a drought, and that drought led to price increase. And Lal Bahadur Shastri ji was our Prime Minister. He asked for a little more wheat to regulate the prices. No one was dying of hunger. And the United States government said, sorry, we won't give you rice unless you change your agriculture, because by then the companies were ready with the new dwarf varieties, which could be used with lots of chemicals. So it was really about selling chemicals, but the old seeds did not go together with chemicals. Now the dwarf varieties could. But look at what happened to Punjab. In 10 years, I did my MSc Honours in Punjab University in the early 70s. By the late 70s, it was destroyed. Just a decade and a half of chemical farming. Destroyed the water, destroyed the soil, destroyed the farmers. Urta Punjab is a film that's been made on the fact that every third youth is a drug addict. Why are small and marginal farmers in a crisis? Because of two problems. The first is industrial agriculture is based on chemical inputs that are very high priced, and I have watched how when chemicals enter tribal areas where women used to be dressed in beautiful silver from here to here, they are selling their silver to buy a sack of urea. And today they are in debt. Because, you know, you use one bag of urea, then you use 2 bags of urea, you have to keep using more. I call chemicals in agriculture ecological narcotics. The second reason why the farmers are in distress is because the globalized system controlled by agribusiness, by greed, is being controlled by about 8 corporations. 3 to 4 in chemicals and seeds, 4 in trade, international trade, 3 in transforming good food into junk food, and now two big giant traders like Walmart and Amazon. When you add this up, they're controlling food not to feed people, not to grow food, but to extract as much as they can. And my research has shown that before globalization, the difference between the price that the farmer got and a consumer paid was between 6 to 10%. Now, the difference between the price the consumer pays and the farmer gets is about 90 to 95% difference. The rest is going to agribusiness and the trading system. So they're paying nothing. They're paying 1%, 2%, and between the high costs that keep rising and the falling prices that keep falling. And I think Dr. Pedro said it so well, that food, instead of being grown to be eaten, is becoming raw material to be processed. And among the 2 future threats, for those of you who care about our common home, the first is the idea that we can drive all farmers off the land and have farming without farmers, digital agriculture with more chemicals. And the second, which is even worse, is we can get rid of food. Food is a sacrament. Food is medicine. Healthy food grown in healthy ways gives us health. We have about 100 trillion microbes in our gut that need diversity of food and healthy food and chemical-free food. So when you eat bad food, you're going to get chronic diseases. This is the reason I have put my last posting on Jaivik Bharat, which is a clear, based on our experience over the last 30 years, how we shift from an extractive agriculture, which is what Dr. Pedro talked about, extractive agriculture, to a circular solidarity system so that the wealth is shared in community, and most importantly, the resources, the water, the nutrition is shared with the earth and our common home. This is called the law of nutrition. It's called the law of return. We can't serve our common home without giving back to the earth. Just taking is a recipe for ecological and social disaster, which is why our farmers are poor. My commitment the last 3 decades has been to work with farmers, and our small and marginal farmers of Tanzania are earning 10 times more than the farmers in the commodity system. And my 35 years of work on agriculture is in this book I was asked to write as a textbook for agriculture. It's called Biodiversity, Agroecology, and Regenerative Agriculture Systems. It synthesizes all my research in every field, from soil to seed to nutrition to climate and to the economics of why are our farmers in a marginal situation. The smallness of the farm is an advantage. It's not a problem. The greed of the global market is the problem. We have to disengage from that. And that's why I talk about true self-reliance as circular solidarity economies between people.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vandana, for that, I think, excellent answer. We have about 4 or 5 minutes more, so I'll ask the question to both of you, and maybe 2 minutes each to answer. The question that is asked by Anthony, where is that? Anthony Diasia. Can we develop an environmentalism of the poor and a jurisprudence of rights for all, humans and nature, to counter this threat? An environmentalism of the poor and a jurisprudence of rights of all. Can we develop that in order to deal with this threat? Dr. Pedro, maybe first. 2 minutes. Pedro? There's difficulty with the...
environmentalism of the poor? No.
Yes.
I don't want environmental poverty. Can you hear me?
Yes, please carry on.
But yes, we do. There is an what we're talking of all night is that the farmers are environmentalists. They do know how to work with the land. Yeah, but we've taken them out of that with our economy. So it's an economic environmentalism we need. We need to shift the whole economic process. And if we have that, we will be inclusive of the poor, and they will be no longer poor. Yeah, there will be simple lives. We all need a simpler life. Yeah, but they will be included. And we will be included in their food basket. Yeah. So a true environmentalism will take away poverty. Yeah, will take away exclusion. Jurisprudence for all, yes, but much of our jurisprudence globally is being trashed at the moment.
Okay.
We're losing in many countries any sense of human rights. Yeah, economic rights, corporate rights are overtaken. I mean, thankfully, one good thing that was done was this trading arrangement a couple of years ago, where companies were making their own rules in their own courts, if you like. No, they have to be responsible to a developed universal system, but also we need to improve the court systems within all countries to deal with these problems.
Thanks, Pedro.
And we can if we are committed.
Thanks, Pedro. We'll just give 2 minutes to Dr. Vandana for the same thing, because we need to wind up.
Yeah. You know, for such a big question, 2 minutes is little, but I'll respect it.
Yeah.
You know, if Laudato Si has reminded us, we live in a common home, we are one interdependent community, and we all depend on Mother Earth, and the cry of the poor and the cry of the earth is the same cry, is what Laudato Si says. It's not separate. Therefore, the ecological crisis and the crisis of poverty and dispossession is the same. This earth is made for all, and we all can benefit from her gifts by not taking more than our share. This is what Gandhi meant when he said the earth provides enough for everyone's needs, but not for a few people's greed. And no matter which text you look at, Ishopanishad in India or the Laudato Si or the Bible, you will find this teaching. I want to just mention that the rights of nature, the rights of the poor and rights of humans are also interconnected, because humans are not separate from nature. And as Pedro said, poverty is a result of injustice and inequality. I have a book which goes deeper into this, how the rights of the earth and rights of people are the same set of rights. It's called Earth Democracy. And more recently, how we are reaching a stage where 1% is destroying our oneness, destroying the earth, destroying every law, try and usurp everything. I've written in my book, in my essay on the earth journey, they now want to mine our bodies and our minds as the next raw material and turn human beings from being in service of the earth to being in service for profits by mining our data and manipulating us through artificial intelligence. This is the moment for thinking people with a long-term view of life, to get together from all traditions, all religious traditions, all scientific disciplines, all walks of life, to say enough is enough. 500 years of colonialism has already done a lot of damage. Now we need to live as one humanity on one planet, our common.
Thanks, thanks, Dr. Vandana Shiva. I think I have about 2 minutes to propose a vote of thanks. Dear friends of ecology, it has been very insightful listening to these discerning conversations with Dr. Vandana Shiva and Dr. Pedro Walpole. Thank you, Dr. Vandana Shiva, and thank you, Dr. Pedro Walpole, for your valuable time to spend this evening with us, sharing your experiences, your thoughts, and for articulating concrete, scientific, implementable actions. I want to thank every one of you for your time, for being engaging participants in the deliberations with your questions. There were several more questions which we just could not take for want of time. We've had participants from India and from several countries of Asia and from other countries as well. And thank you very much for being part of this conversation. We aim to continue these eco-dialogues and to bring in more interactions and actionable efforts for caring for our common home. You will be able to see a recorded version of this webinar on your JCSA YouTube channel. Many of you have been asking, where you will be able to view all the three We for Migrant campaign webinar series as well. See you soon in another episode of Eco Jesuit JRH webinar series. Stay safe and stay healthy. Good night. Thanks to one and all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, Vandana. And thanks to all our participants.